is doing here, Dan? They're having a ban the book celebration.
Oh, no, I was just listening to NPR and actually,
Fighting ban the book.
yeah, this was actually kind of brilliant. So one of the Brooklyn libraries, or the Brooklyn Library, is basically giving out for free ebooks and audiobooks, right? So that means anybody, unless the state somehow or another gets to like Russia level of control or China level control over the internet, right? Nothing's going to stop a kid in Kansas, or Florida from getting something on their Kindle or listening on Audible. So it's actually kind of a brilliant circumvention. But now, of course, it's going to end up, you guarantee you this will become a whole nother Michigas. But I think it's great. I think it's just like whatever they're doing here. I think it's,
We saw a little positive results in its primary.
It was interesting. That yeah.
Across the country.
No. Look, I think like most of our politics, right? Anybody that's prognosticating in August is probably going to have different things to say in November. That's why I like Nate Silver's thing, which is the statistical analysis, because it sort of accounts for a lot of different scenarios, and it just like it gives you a very broad sense of things, but it'll tell you like they'll run a simulation 40,000 times. And they'll tell you, out of the 40,000 times, 43% of the time it went this way, 43, the remainder goes this way. And you can see why, because it's just, there's so many little factors, right, that can change things. And all it takes in some cases is a small change. But I think anybody who was thinking a certain way 6 months ago is probably thinking very different now. But look, who knows, and how many elections in Israel in the last 5 years, and everybody thinks they've got it figured out. This one's going to 5, yeah. This one's probably going to end up with a, similar results. It's just nonsense. Okay, well, good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Howard. Good Shabbos, Kevin.
Good Shabbos.
All right.
Good Shabbos.
So, second official service.
Yeah.
You look relaxed. You look ready to go.
Yeah.
Good. I have to remember, you're a taller guy, so I have to adjust cameras accordingly, so make sure everybody can get a sense of things. So there you go. Good. So as I explained last night, right, we always bring our campers along somewhat slowly. So Kevin's gonna be up for some parts of the service. He'll be sitting for some to watch and learn. And any place that he knows, he'll jump in. And then, we'll start to hear some of your stuff.
Yeah.
Which will be great. So we'll start off on page 186, gratitude and thanks. Modani lefanecha melechai v'kayam. Modani lefanecha melechai v'kayam. Modani lefanecha thanks to you, Adonai, ever living sovereign, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust. Turn now to page 192, Matovu. Matovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Israel. Turn now to page 194, a blessing for our bodies together in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam bechokma, u'bara bo nekavim chalulim chalulim. Galui biyadua livnei chisech bodecha, she'im yipatech echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, yefshar lehitkayem v'la'amod lefanecha. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh chol basar u'mafli la'asot. Good Shabbos, Linda. Sorry, give me 1 second. Pin this there. Okay, we're now on page 196 at the top. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehora tehora. shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God, God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praise are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher b'yado nefesh kol chai, beruach kol b'sar ish. We now rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 198. Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
How long have you been in town for? Just a few days. Well, we bring Israel with you, which is good. Yeah.
Well, the good part.
Yeah, the
The
good
good part.
Harold will get you set up with the Siddur. Page 198. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'safli bina l'chin me'od b'layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shofet kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokach haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam al yisharurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten la'im koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavir shena me'inai u'tzniuma me'al. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'tifara. Please be seated. We're on page 205, the second reading down from the top. From the cowardice that shrinks from new truth, from the laziness that is content with half-truths, from the arrogance that thinks it knows all truth, O God of truth, deliver us. Blessed is Adonai, teacher of Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Page 206, the very top. Elu devarim she'in lahem shiur, sh'adam ochel porotehem ba'olam hazeh, v'akeren kayemet lo le'olam haba, ve'elu hem kibud ha'avoim u'gmilut chasadim, ve'hashkamat beit hamidrash shacharit ve'aravit, ve'hachnasat orchim u'bikur cholim, ve'hachnasat kalal v'yatamet v'yut tefila, ve'habat shalom ben adam la'chavero, ve'talmud Torah keneged kulam. We'll turn now to page 212. We'll rise in body or spirit for the opening blessing of Pezukei Tezimah. Baruch shehamar ve'ayit ha'olam, Baruch Hoseh Bereshit, Baruch Omer Ve'yosef, Baruch Gozer Umekayem, Baruch Merachem al haaretz, Baruch Merachem al habriot, Baruch Meshalem Sachar Tov L'Rehav, Baruch Hailad V'Kayam L'Netzach, Baruch Bodeh U'Matzil, Baruch Shemo. Bishpachot u'bizmirot megadelcha, u'nshabechecha nefercha v'nazkir shimcha v'namlichecha, malchinu Eloheinu, yachid che'olamim, melech meshubach u'mokor de'at shemo hagadol, Baruch atah Adonai, melech me'ulal b'tishpachot. Please be seated. We're on page 214. Tov le'odot Adonai, Tov להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות ואמונתך בלילות טוב להודות לאדוני עלי אסור ולנבל עלי היגיון בכינור כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך במעשה ידך מה גדול מעשיך ים מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך מה גדול מעשיך ים מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך מה גדול מעשיך ים מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך אשרי יושבי ביתך עוד יעללוך אשרי יושבי ביתך עוד יעללוך סלע נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם מעתה ועד עולם מעתה ועד עולם הללויה 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 hallelujah hallelujah Psalm 150 page 218 hallelujah 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 el bekocho hallelujah birkia uzot hallelujah biguratam hallelujah kero krudo hallelujah 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 beteka shofar hallelujah bechinor hallelujah betofu machol hallelujah beminim behugav hallelujah 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 betzilzlei shama hallelujah betzilzlei trua kol hanshama hallelujah 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 Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Nishmat kol chai, tevarech et shemcha Adonai Eloheinu et we're now on page 220 at the very top. Ilufinu maleh shira kayam, ulshoneinu rina kamon galav, vesivtotenu shebach kemarkevei rakia, vehineinu mehirot kashemesh vechayareya, veyadeinu frusot kenishrei shamayim, veragleinu kalot kayalot, ein anachnu maspikim lehodot lecha, Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu. We're now on page 222, the second paragraph down from the top. Shochenan maro mekadosh shemo v'chatur adenu tzadikim Adonai la'yesharim la'avat tehillah v'fi yesharim tihitalav divrei tzadikim tihitbarachu b'lshon chasidim tihitromamu b'kerev kedoshim tihitchadashu ma'kehalot ribevotam chabet Yisrael every night far Shimcha Malkeinu bechol dor v'ador yababai yababai bye 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 yababai yababai bye bye yababai bye 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 yababai bye 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 bye. Will now rise in body or spirit for the concluding blessing of Pesukei de Zimra on page 223. Remain standing through the Chatzi Kaddish and the Baruch Hu on the next two pages. Yishtabach Shimecha Alad Malkeinu Ahel HaMelech HaGadol HaKadosh B'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz Ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu Asher u'shmacha v'zimra u'memshala ha'netzach Gedula u'kura tivla v'tiferet kedusha u'malchut Brachot ve'hodaot ve'ata ve'adolam Baruch ata Adonai El melech gadol v'tishpachot El ha'hodaot Adonai niflaot Abocher b'shirei zimra melech el Te'aolamim Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbai Ya'amad yirach pirtei v'yamlich malchutei V'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael Ba'hagala u'b'zman kariv v'yimeru Amen Yeshmei Rabba mevarach le'elam li'almei almayah Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramah v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudshah Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damira belha v'yimeru Amen Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Vaed best estimates are that he's
That way?
generally that way, but it's confusing because when we're in different places, it changes a little bit.
Fair
So
enough.
there we go. But we've never really nailed it down. We should get one of those from the compass things.
Oh, yeah.
Just figure it out exactly. We'll put a Mizrach. You know what a Mizrach
We should have
is?
had a
You know
compass. We should have had.
I was gonna say,
But
back
the
before the
Mizrach
app,
in
there was a
Israel
thing called a
idea,
compass.
always struck me as odd. Once you're in Haaretz, what do you need a Mizrach for? But everybody still has them because they're, pieces of art. But, it's one of the nicest things anybody actually gave me was a beautiful Mizrach when I was ordained. But, I do think actually like for the holidays, it might not be a bad idea to, have something in the sanctuary and just put something up that says this is generally.
But the good news is, regardless of what direction you're facing, at some point, I'm sure
Yes,
it
I'm sure that
eventually
is-
would get to Jerusalem.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Okay, so we're now on page 228. We'll start by reading the English together at the bottom, and then we'll sing together or Chadash just above it. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy, you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness, you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai, in wisdom. You form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands. And for the lights you created, may they glorify. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Or Chadash, Al Tzion Tahir. Or Chadash, Al Tzion Tahir. V'nizkeh kulanu me'era le'omro. V'nizkeh kulanu me'era le'omro. Yadadai bimbam, yadadai bimbam, yadadai bimbam, yadadai. Yadadai bimbam, yadadai bimbam, yadadai bimbam, yadadai Baruch Atah Adonai Yotzer HaMe'orot. Now on page 230, we'll start by reading together in English at the top and the Hebrew at the bottom. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears, whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Nagila v'nismecha b'yeshuatecha v'habienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu kol memiut le'artzeinu Yehel poel yeshuot ata ubanu b'charta ve'kerabtanu l'shimcha agadol sela be'emet leodot lecha v'checha b'haba baruch ata Adonai abocher b'amo Yisrael b'avam Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Now page 234. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher Elohim etzavah Hayom al livadecha ושינתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך וקומך וקשרך מאוד עבדיך והיו תותפות בידיך וחכם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Page 236. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת להם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי ביתיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף ותיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים ללכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. We're now on page 238, 4 lines down, up from the bottom of Hebrew. תהילות לעליון ברוך ומבורך משה ומרים ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נהדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף לב ביי 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 שירה חדשה שיפו גאולים לשמך שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צבא ישראל אומה בעזרת ישראל ופדה חינומך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. We'll begin the Amidah together on page 242 and then continue silently from there. As always, go at your own pace, and when you're finished, if you're standing, you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi ani tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Okay. So I'll let you take a seat. And then play after that. So we're on page 324 for repetition of the Amidah. And if you're still doing your silent Amidah, please finish and then you can join us. Page 324. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Koneh HaKol V'Zocher Chaseot Ve'imahot Megula Lipnei B'neihem Leman Shemo B'Yahah Melech Ozer Moshiach Baruch atah Adonai Magid Abraham V'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Ataram Le'Hoshia Morid Atah Mechakel Chaim B'Chesed Mechayei Metim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Ve'Ofer Ohodim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michavochava Kebrot Umidomelach Melech Mebit Umechayet Umashmiach Yeshua V'nehmanat L'chayot Metim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim. Page 326. Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam Keshem shemachishim oto b'shmimaron Kagatuv al yad nevi'echa V'karat el ze ve'amar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzebaot Meloch haaretz Kevodo Adir Adirenu Adonai Adonenu Madir Shimecha B'chol haaretz Baruch Kevod Adonai B'mkomo Echad Eloheinu Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshiachenu Ve'Hu Yashmienu V'Rachamav Le'enei Kol Chai Ani Adonai Elohechem Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elohai Tzion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Ledor Vador Ledor Vador Yidon Lecha Ledor Vador Ledor Vador Ledor Vador Yidon Lecha Ulenetzach Netzachim Kedushatcha Nakish Kedushatcha Nakish V'shivchacha Eloheinu Mipinu lo yavush Le'olam Le'olam Va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Okay, please be seated. Welcome Cantor Kevin back up. We're on page 329.
Shavu 28, I believe, actually. Or this is different.
Oh, no, you're right. Shamar was 328.
Cool. Make sure we didn't have different prayer books.
No, you are good.
Shameru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל נוטי לעולם, נוטי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. והיום השביעי, ביום השביעי שבת, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Awesome. All right, you can go relax for a little bit here. Keep learning. We haven't done this in a while, actually, but on the bottom of page 329, let's read together in English. The meaning of Shabbat is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week we live under the tyranny of things of space. On Shabbat we try to become attuned to holiness in time. It is a day on which we are called upon to share in what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. We'll read together now on page 330 in English. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults, and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. Baruch atah Adonai shotcha levatcha v'yiradav. Now on the bottom of page 332. For the expanded grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fair world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. Modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulachana eleodot. Sim Shalom, page 334. Sim Shalom, tova ubracha, chen v'chesed berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Orcheinu yotzreinu kulanu kechad, ve'or panecha, ki ve'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom tova ubracha, chen v'chesed berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Torah chaim ve'ahavat chesed, ve'ahavat chesed, u'tzedaka u'racha ve'rachamim, ve'chaim ve'shalom. Sim shalom tova u'bracha, chen v'chesed ve'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, ve'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael, bechol eit u'bechol shah, b'shlomecha. Sim shalom tova u'bracha, chen v'chesed ve'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, baruch atah Adonai, hamevarech et amo Yisrael v'shalom. We read together now in English on top of page 337. Prayer is not purely an act. All things pray and all things pour forth their souls. The heavens pray, the earth prays, every creature and every living thing. In all life there is longing. Creation is itself but a longing, a kind of prayer to the Almighty. What are the clouds, the rising and the setting of the sun, the soft radiance of the moon and the gentleness of the night? What are the flashes of the human mind and the storms of the human heart? They are all prayers, the wordless outpouring of boundless longing for God. Oh, se shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Okay, good Shabbos, everybody. So if you are in the room and you have a Chumash, if you're in the cloud Chumash, looks like this. It's page 1259, where we'll begin reading in a few minutes. And if you're in the Women's Torah commentary, the parsha begins on page 1117. Again, Women's Commentaries 1117, cloud Chumash is 1259. And we are in Parshat Re'eh. As we get closer and closer to the end of Dvarim, to the end of the Torah, and as we get closer and closer to the Chagim, to the holidays, and we get closer and closer to the end of Moshe's life, the intensity builds. From this point to the end of the Torah, it just keeps building and building and building. And we have in this week's Parsha, one of the places in the Torah in which there is a discussion about blessings and curses, about choices, presumably in one form or the other. And it begins with a very important word, re'eh, right? In the same way that we think about the Shema is like our key core text, core behavior, right? Telling us to focus on our listening skills. Re'eh is commanding us to see things, right? It's commanding us to actually take the time and to observe and to think and ultimately to see that which is the right path from the wrong. So I want to share, and I'm sorry, the printer wasn't working this morning the way that I'd like it to, so I'm reading from my phone. But we're going to study a little bit really focused on the beginning of the Parsha. First, using some help from the Chama Leibowitz to point us in the right direction to some of our classic commentators, and then to something that's more contemporary, which I thought was really beautiful in building off these more ancient ideas. So the first thing to note is that translation, as I have been trying to say, as much as I possibly can, right? Every translation has something in it in which there is room to explore, right? Room to question, to even consider the possibilities of bias. We'll put those to the side for today, but it's one of the reasons why eventually learning Hebrew and being able to study in the Hebrew itself presents some very interesting opportunities for discussion that we might not see if we're only looking at the English itself. Okay, so I'm going to read the first few verses in English. This is, again, the most sort of common translation that you'll find these days, right? So A, right? See, this day I set before you blessing and curse. Okay, bracha, blessing, fala, curses. Okay, straightforward there. Okay, next sentence, et bracha asher tishma'u. Okay, the key word to focus on is on asher. Okay, in the English translation, it says, if you obey the commandments of the eternal your God. Okay, then later in the next pasuk, we see things change a little bit. We go from the word asher, when we're talking about the bracha, we're talking about following mitzvot. We go into verse 28, we say, vehaklala im lo tishma'u. Okay, now again, normally, if you look at the English translation, there is really no difference. Okay, we're told in verse 27 when talking about bracha, if you obey the commandments of the eternal, your God that I enjoined upon you this day, and curse if you do not obey the commandments of the eternal your God. So seemingly in the English translation, there is no difference whatsoever. And yet in the Hebrew, there's actually a very significant difference. In the first pasuk, we use the word asher. Asher can mean if, it can also mean that. Okay, it changes, and im is one of my favorite words in the entire Torah. I've given sermons about it before. A lot of the end of the Torah is filled with this word im because im is conditional. It's an if. Okay, if you do X, if you don't do Y, right? That idea of im is very, very important to us. Why? Because when we talk about conversations, for example, about free will, about choice, about what we do in our lives, if you took that word out of the Torah, we would have a very different dogma. We would have a very different way of thinking about things because it would imply that there really is no choice, that it's not about us and our agency. It's about God dictating and us following. There's plenty of that. It's even in these psukim, without a doubt. But the im is a very important piece of the puzzle. So Leibowitz points out, right, this anomaly and asks the question, right? So why is this? Why would there be a difference in these psukim? Why would they choose? Why would God choose? Why would Moshe choose to use these different words? And she points to a teaching from the Malbim. Malbim is a 19th century, one of the great rabbis, one of the first rabbis I learned to quote, actually. But his English access is limited these days. So I think you can find an English translation, I think, of some of his Torah commentary. But he lived in the syntax, right? In the grammar of Hebrew, he would look for these little moments. And so he's fascinated by this same kind of thing. So he points out, okay, a blessing that you obey, the first version with asher, implying then that the very obedience to the divine commandments constitutes the blessing itself. Do not imagine that there is any this worldly reward outside the good deed itself. It is not like the case of the master who rewards his servant for loyalty and punishes for disobedience, where the servant's due is dependent on the master's whim. It is not inherent in the action itself. The parallel is really to the doctor who assures his patient that he will be well as long as he adheres to the regimen he prescribes, and that otherwise he will die. The consequences here are inherent in the deed itself. So what is he talking about? The choice of the word asher implies that there really isn't a choice, right? It's that. It's not if. It's not conditional. Okay. The mitzvot are what the mitzvot are. In the same way the doctor tells you, right, cut out your salt, cut out your cholesterol, and you will be okay. And if you don't follow that instruction, it will not. It's implicit and obvious what the outcome will be. If you behave in a good way, you're not, it's, what do they call it? Moral desert, right? You're not doing mitzvot for the purposes of getting a reward. It's not Pavlovian. We're not expecting to get a pat on the head. They're implicitly what we're supposed to do. And because we do them, blessings will come into our lives. This becomes the basis for actually a very significant line of rabbinic thinking about our behavior in life in general. That we don't do the mitzvot because we're expecting sachar, right? We're not expecting a reward. Even if the rabbis say, right, ba'olam haba, you get it. The main idea is that generally, if you live a good life, if you're kind to people, if you give tzedakah, if you help out your community, if you take care of your family, if you do the things that the mitzvot are generally focused on, what do you observe tends to happen? Your life is a good life. You're surrounded by friends, you're surrounded by family, etc. It's a very utopian view, simplistic view, certainly. But I think most of us would say, in the times in our lives, perhaps where we were not so kind to others, or we were a little out of sorts, or our behavior towards the outside world, what generally comes back to us is what we put out. So there is some inherent logic in here, and it makes sense then to use asher, because the asher is implying again that there isn't a conditional aspect of this. Okay, but in the end, we see the opposite when we get the next verse and we talk about curses, right? We talk about the things that can come to us if we don't listen, right? If we don't follow the rules, if we don't do those things. And that conditional part puts again the emphasis on us in that we get a very clear roadmap, at least presumably, from God, from Moshe, from the Torah itself about the distinctions between blessings and curses. And that more often than not, our decisions as human beings is not about whether we're going to do the right thing, it's about whether we're going to do the wrong thing. And that a lot of times that's the moment where we decide to do the wrong thing, or we acquiesce to doing the wrong thing. And we see the results of that behavior both on an individual level and at a greater level than that. So I want to now bring in a teaching that I found from a person I'm not familiar with, but I found online. Her name is Nomi Kaltman. She's a student at Yeshivat Maharat, which, I know a nod here, and I'm not sure actually, Miriam, if this is, people are aware of it in Israel, but this is a really remarkable thing. In 2009, it is a Orthodox seminary focused on training women to become clergy, to become rabbis, to serve as chaplains, to do all sorts of things, and has been ordaining women rabbis. It's now, it says, 13th year, has graduated 49 women who are serving in a number of different institutions, again, with an Orthodox smicha. Now, you can imagine, this is not universally accepted, it's a complicated thing, but it's a remarkable thing in itself. And so Nomi is, I believe, graduating or being ordained this year. Maybe this is an old document and otherwise. But I thought her teaching on this was really great. So she says, the Malbim notes that blessings and curses are not floating ideas that are a concept in some far off time. Rather, the blessings that are bestowed upon those who immerse themselves in Torah and Judaism convey a sense of achievement, satisfaction, and sacred growth that is evident to everyone around them. The blessings they receive, the Malbim says, are so obvious that all can see them, hence the asher. This encourages other people to strive for a commitment to Torah and mitzvot and to actively choose a life that will endow them with blessings. The blessings or curses that people may experience are not subject to randomness. Judaism believes in hashgacha pratit, the divine providence, a world in which everything that happens is intended and occurs due to divine will. And this is the other part of our conversation about free will and how much of it we've had. We've had this discussion before in our Torah study. The fact, though, she says, that something may seem to have occurred randomly does not detract from this principle. In fact, the reverse is true. Everything that we choose to do in our lives reflects a reality in which we have the power to choose our fate. Taking an attitude that everything is deliberate and reflects the will of God determines whether we are blessed or cursed. The choice is ours through our actions and decisions. There is also a deeper message of this week's Parsha, she says. Because God has given the Jewish people a choice, we are able to affirm ourselves to a commitment to a world of goodness, one in which we reflect the will of God through our actions. This results in people treating each other with respect and fairness. These actions reverberate so that the world we live in then echoes this kindness, and the society we live in is filled with fairness. In contrast, if we forsake the divine word of God, we then curse our future by choosing to reject a life of blessing. Instead, a world is created in which people suffer needlessly and do not have revealed blessings in their lives. So I think, she does a wonderful job of sort of summarizing this whole concept and how we need to be thinking about not just this Parsha, but this time of year, right? As soon as we are, blink our eyes, the Chagim will be upon us, right? We're all, look at the current, you can always tell, right? Look at the rabbis and cantors as they start looking more anxious around this time of year. There's good reason, but we're actually supposed to live in that anxiety to some degree. This month leading up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is a moment of reflection, of a moment in which we ask these kinds of questions about what are the blessings, what are the curses, what are we experiencing personally, what do we experience communally? How do we, through our actions, impact the balance of these things? And I think that, again, it does not take much. Open your eyes, re'eh, and look around right now. If there's one thing I think that the world could agree upon right now, everybody on the planet could agree upon, is this can't be the best we can do. It just can't. Okay, from every perspective, I think we can say this is not the best that we can do. So we begin a slow process of really looking for where are the blessings, where are the curses. The blessings are our share. They're guaranteed to us if we can follow, right? Forget about following every mitzvah to the letter, okay? That's a different conversation for a different time. If we can follow the essential qualities of our Jewish lives, of that of compassion, that of caring for those who are in need, that of building community, that of studying and putting most of our energy into the betterment of our lives and those of the people around us, we see the results of that kind of behavior. But it does not take much for us to end up in that scenario, right? That if we don't do that, and even worse, if we act in callous ways, if we cut ourselves off, if we close our hand, right? That's another image we get from this parsha. If we harden our hearts, that we see the results of that kind of behavior. And this is it. This is what we see. So we can start, again, opening our eyes, seeing differently, taking these weeks that lead to the holidays and the holidays themselves to propel us into a year in which we can all do a certain amount of work and change. And I think really it was sort of very powerful teaching to come across this morning. And I will just say you were all very much in the blessing category. That is for sure, as far as I'm concerned. No klala around, only bracha. So I wish everyone again a Shabbat Shalom. Reminder, page number in a moment when we start our Torah service, 1259 in Cloud Chumash and 1117 the Women's Torah Commentary. If you have some other form at home you're looking for, again, Dvarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verse 26. So at this point, we'll turn back to our Sidurim, our prayer books, page 362 for Seder Kriyat HaTorah. En kamocha Elohim Adonai ve'ekem asecha malchutcha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai mahala Adonai imloch leolam va'ed Adonai ozamo yiten Adonai varech et amo v'shalom Amar Rabbim Eitiva Berzon Ha'eretz Zion Tivnei Chovot Yerushalayim Ivecha levad batachnu Melech Melech Adon Olamim Ki mitzion tetzei Torah Ki mitzion tetzei Torah Udevar Adonai miYerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo Gadol Adonai Tiunei Homema Shemo Yachdav Lecha Adonai HaGedula VeHaGevura VeHaTiferet VeHaNetzach VeHaHod Ki Chol Bashamayim U'Ba'aretz Ki Chol Bashamayim U'Ba'aretz Adonai HaMamlacha VeHamid Nahaseh Lechol Erosh Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Le'har Kodsho. Please be seated. Miriam, you want to, Leah? Okay, you don't have to move. We don't put any pressure on you. So if you, okay, that's great. Okay, here, this is just big print, so it's going to be helpful. And we're going to be reading from the beginning of the Parsha. Talmud, what's Hebrew name? Miriam bat Tzvi. L'aliyah harishona. Baruch Adonai Amorach Leolam Va'ed.
Amen. Re'eh Anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha ve'uklala et habracha asher tishmeu el mitzvot Adonai Elohechem asher anochi מצווה אתכם היום והכללה אם לא תשמעו אל מצוות אדוני אלוהיכם וסרתם מן הדרך אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום ללכת אחרי אלוהים אחרים אשר לא ידעתם והיה כי הביאך אדוני אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר אתה בשמה לרשת ונתת את הברכה על ההר גריזים ואת הכללה על הר עיבל. הלא המה בעבר הירדן, אחרי דרך מבוא השמש, בארץ הכנעני היושב בערבה, מול הגלגל אצל אלוני מורה, כי אתם עוברים את הירדן לבוא לרשת את הארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיכם נותן לכם, רשתם אותה וישבתם בה, ושמרתם לעשות את כל החוקים ואת המשפטים אשר אנוכי נותן לפניכם היום. אלה החוקים והמשפטים אשר תשמרון לעשות בארץ אשר נתן אדוני אלוהי אבותיך לך לרשת כל הימים אשר אתם חיים על האדמה. עבד תעבדון את כל המקומות אשר עבדו שם הגויים אשר אתם יורשים אותם את אלוהיהם על ההרים הרמים על הגבעות ותחת כל עץ רענן וניתצתם את מזבחותם ושיברתם את מצבותם באשריהם תשרפון באש ופסילי אלוהיהם תגדעון ואיבדתם את שמם מן המקום ההוא. לא תעשון כן לאדוני לאלוהיכם, כי אם אל המקום אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהיכם מכל שבטיכם לשום את שמו שם, לשכנו תדרשו ובאת שמה.
ונתן לנו תורה תלך, וחיי עולם נתן בתוכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. I'm sure your father is very happy right now. Very, very happy. It's great to see you, man. It's great to have you back. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. We'll take a moment now and here, I'm good. So we'll take a moment now to offer our Misha Berach. We're on page 371 back in our Sidurim. Mishaberach Avotenu v'imotenu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah v'yivarech et hacholim ha'el. This morning we begin by thinking of those in our community who are in need of healing. Think of Spencer Levy, Aaron Zweig, Michael Klinghoffer, Amy Cass, Steve Levine, Rivka Bat Rachel, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Sylvia, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sylvia Devora Bat Francis, Deborah Block Kroll, Sylvia Orn, Muriel Hirsch, Michelle Sawicki, Francis Kirschman, Paul Bat Esther, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriela Rose Spicer, Dina Bat Chana, Barbara Kushner, David Kyle Klopman, Michael Ben Chananya, Betsy Tepper, Lorraine Davis, Mazel Bat Adele, Erwin Levin, Chana Bat Miriam, Moshe Ben Ephraim Fischel, Devorah Bat Sima, Moshe Eliezer Ben Yekutiel, Judy Yang, Jeffrey Miller, Sandy Greenwald, Pat Skionis, Peter Parcher, Jeannie, Eva, Leah and Pam Levinson, Jody Bernstein, Matthew Agarwal, Leslie Schifrin, Charlie Zweig, Michael Rosenblatt, August Hill, Trish Schapp, Jerry Leibowitz, and Rivka Bat Yehuda Bebela. In addition to the names that we just read, we'll give an opportunity certainly for those watching at home to add names, and for anybody who's in the room with us this morning, anybody that would like to add? Marsha?
Plenty.
Diane?
Audrey Tempasky, Barbara Schwartz, Diane Schwartz, Mary Moore, Erica Heck, Umba and Don Stapleton, Leah, Vivian Travis, Ashley and Maddie, Harriet Berger, Lenore Parker, Larry Jackson.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihim L'chalimam L'rabatam L'chazikam V'yishlach Lehem Mehera Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf Hashtal B'Galav Zman Kariv and Omar Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bless and heal those who are suffering. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say together, Amen. El na refana la, el na refana la, el na refana la, refuah shelema. El na refana lo, el na refana lo, el na refana lo, refuah shelema. Now rise in body or spirit as we lift and dress the Torah. We're on the bottom of page 307. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Okay, please be seated. Shabbat shalom, everyone. We'll turn now for our Haftarah in just a moment. And our Haftarah is one, again, as we're connecting our time in the calendar to the upcoming Chagim. And again, sort of bridging us from Tisha B'Av to that moment. We look at the Haftarot that carry us in that way. As oftentimes referred to as Haftarot of consolation, as we're told. So I'm not sure entirely how much consolation we get out of all these Haftarahs, because some of them can be quite biting. But they principally are all still talking about the same kind of ideas that we discussed in our drash earlier, and which we'll, I'm sure, get to in our Torah study. And a lot of it again comes into this question of sort of what is our faith? How do we define ourselves in these days that lead up to the Chagim? And Isaiah, as will appear a lot in preparation and during the holidays themselves, gives us a number of things to be thinking about. So it's on page 1290 if you have the Cloud Chumash in front of you. If you're following in some other form, you're looking for Isaiah chapter 54, verse 11 to chapter 55, verse 5. Again, page 1290. And before we do our reading, I'll offer our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza b'divrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo b'nvi'eh ha'emet v'tzedek. Ah, unhappy, storm-tossed soul, none to comfort you. I will make garnets your building stones and sapphires your foundations. I will build your towers with rubies, your gates with precious stones, your border with gems. All your children shall be taught by the Eternal, and great shall be the happiness of your children. You shall be established in righteousness, safe from oppression and unafraid. Safe from terror, it shall not come near you. Should any attack you, it will not be my doing. Whoever attacks you will fall on your account. It is I who created the smith who fans the coal in the fire and forges weapons by his work. I also create the destroyer to wreak havoc. No weapon fashioned against you can succeed. You shall defeat all who rise to accuse you. This is the heritage of the eternal servants, and I am the source of their vindication, says the Eternal. Come, all who are thirsty, come for water. Even if you have no money, come buy food and eat. Come buy food without money, wine and milk without cost. Why spend money for what is not bread? Why spend your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen well to me, and you shall eat what is good, and your soul shall delight in abundance. Open your ears and come to me, hearken, and you shall live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you, like the true love I extended to David. As once I made him a witness to the world, a prince and commander of nations, so now you shall summon people you do not know, and people that do not know you shall come running to you, because of the Eternal, your God, the Holy One of Israel, who has given you glory. We'll return back to our Sidurim, page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ahel hanemad haomer ve'oseh, המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ביום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Amen. We'll turn now to page 376. At the bottom, we'll offer a prayer for our country. Guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace, and may we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. And let us say together, Amen. Prayer for the state of Israel, page 377. Avinu Shebashamayim Tzur Yisrael v'goalo barech et Medinat Yisrael reishit tzmichat geulatenu. Again, aleha be'evrat chastecha, ufros aleha sukat shlomecha. Ushlach orcha v'amitcha l'rasheha, sareha v'yoatzeha. V'taknem be'etzat tova milfanecha, v'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam liyoshveha v'nomar. Amen. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. We'll turn to page 374, rise in our body or spirit, as we conclude Seder Kriyat HaTorah. Yeah, hallelujah, Shem Adonai, ki nizkav shemo levado, odo al heretz v'shamayim, vayarem keherem li'amo, v'ila b'chol chasidav, livnei Yisrael am kero. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem, torati al tazoru. Etz hayim him, v'machasikim ba, v'tom te'al me'ushar, teracheh darchei noam, v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha min hashuva, kadesh kadesh yameinu, kadesh yameinu kekedem. Remain standing as we turn to page 586, the very bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeh. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'atef gdula liyotzeh breshit, shelo asanu k'uyei haratzon, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo samachachinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch. Page 591. Ve'emar Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, vayom ahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. I invite those in mourning and those observing yard-side to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We begin by thinking of those in our community who passed in recent months. Martin Blake, Faith Diskin, Linda Denoth, Arlene Eber, Jay Fagan, Ellen Frank, Chaim Bear Greenwald, Gerald Hirsch, Mark Joseph, Jean Beard Cass, Gertrude Katz, Buddy Kossoff, Elaine Krotman, Emmanuel Kiprios, Leo Leibowitz, William Lippman, Sandra Tromberg Luongo, Norma Paulsek, David Senth, Anita Sheldon, Alan Silver, Larry Wartor, Peter Weinstein, Matthew Adam Zimmer. We also mark the yard sites that occurred during the last week for Henry Edelberg, Colleen Binstock, Rose Blake, Ira Blum, Augusta Brill, David Davidson, Carlos Dobrin, Helen Fagan, Tobias Fuhr, William Hesse, Bernard Jacobs, Hyman Joseph, Molly Katzenbogen, Michael Edward Kelman, Isidore Krennick, Moses Lifshitz, Michael Littman, Andrea Ruby Okino, Jenny Osofsky, Harold Pachel, Goldie Sackner, Joseph Sanders, and Saul Weinberg. Is there anyone else saying Kaddish for someone we did not mention this morning?
Steve Palvini.
Gunther Grubner במנהג של המשפחה שלי.
Stand. We'll join together now on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayichon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'le'amei almayla. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitbar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitalev, v'yithalal, shemei v'kudsha b'richu. Le'elah mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, v'amiran ve'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be forever blessed. Please be seated, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom again. And welcome, Kevin. Wonderful first Shabbat, first weekend. Get a lot more to come. More to come. High holiday things, maybe in the future, you know. But it's great to have you, and we're looking forward to, you know, more and more. It's just, you know, you're great. You fit in immediately. I love it. So just a reminder of a few other things coming up. First is to join us for Torah study at 12 o'clock. And we'll do that on Zoom as we have done. Just a reminder that I believe next Shabbat is our first Shabbat of the month, right? So it will be Torah Women's Commentary, this time facilitated by Emily Kutash. So we're looking forward to being with Emily next week to study again. A reminder that tomorrow at 11 o'clock is the last, I can't believe it, the last of the 2022 summer book season with Ruth Joseph. The book group has had a great summer for what I'm told. So again, one last time, tomorrow, 11 o'clock, just please contact Ruth for more information. Regular classes are in session this week. Advanced Conversation with Hebrew at 11:15 on Monday, and then a mitzvah at 11:30. My Heschel class is at 12 o'clock on Zoom on Mondays, and 5 o'clock, the Social Justice Committee has its virtual meeting. Reminder that on Thursday at 7 o'clock on Zoom, we have the next in our series of conversations around science and religion. This time a conversation between myself and Professor Carl Grossman, our very own Professor Carl Grossman. Our focus will be on the environment and environmental issues through the lens of both, again, the science and religion together. So again, join us Thursday at 7 o'clock on Zoom. Reminder that next Shabbat, being Labor Day weekend, apparently is our official time to change services back to 6 o'clock on Friday nights. I think there was some machloket about this because I said that it was the week after Labor Day, but I'm told otherwise. So we're going to go with what the minhag is. So 6 o'clock next week. Still, as long as the weather is still keeping with us for at least the next few weeks, we'll meet outside in the front of the church. So again, that is next week's time shift. And a reminder that on Thursday, September 8th in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, in fact, we have a docent-led tour of the Montauk Lighthouse, followed by a light lunch at George's Lighthouse Cafe. So if you've never been to Lighthouse, or you've been a million times, you've probably never been there with me. So that's something. And September 8th, 10:30. How are you coming?
Yeah, to the lighthouse.
Yeah, you've done it a few times.
Oh, you're not.
Probably.
I would have come, but I looked at the menu at the restaurant.
Not for you.
Not that.
Well, why don't you come for the tour then? I mean, there's a million places to eat in Montauk, right? You can go. Yeah, go exactly. Go to the health food store. There's a nice health food store there. You go to Orange Crush on the way home. Yeah, so you know, it's the camaraderie that we're talking about more than the food.
Oh, that's good.
Right? That's it.
Right.
Also, a reminder that Sunday, September 11th, between 9 and 5 o'clock, we're going to be part of Harbor Fest, which we used to do every year, and I think last few years it either didn't happen or we may not have done it.
No, it was there.
It was there. Yeah, I know the food pantry is a big part of it. We should be food pantry adjacent. You know, we recommend to be as close to the food pantry tent as possible. But very importantly, we're looking for volunteers, even for a half an hour to sit at the booth. You know, just be wonderful people and share your love of Temple Adas Israel with the walkers by. And if you can give us a little bit of time that day, again, anytime between 9 and 5, we're going to set up a volunteer sign-up sheet. So looking forward to it. And you may run into Rabbi Dan and his children at some point or the other. Also, something tells me that will be our main enticement. Come see Em and me. So
I'd love to meet him.
I know. Well, no, he's been making appearances. He came to the mini golf last week, which was really fun. He mostly tolerated it, which was pretty good until the end. Anyway, so okay, so we're going to Cantor Kevin. Any favorite ending of Shabbos services stuff? You a Yigdal guy? You a Don Olam guy? You got a Ein Kelohenu guy?
Whatever your favorite is, it's my
Ah, see, this is a good intern already. We can see. Howard, Alan, Martin, Miriam, anything from Haaretz that you love?
Yeah.
Yigdal. That's usually what happens when I ask this question. Is we end up. I'll just okay, but here is just one really quick Yigdal story which I love.
So again, last Sunday I was asked to speak at the 150th anniversary of the Union Chapel in Shelter Island, and it's this great thing. And now done it. This is the 5th year of doing it, and they had a rabbi as the person to speak at the 150th anniversary, which I think is a remarkable thing. But what's so interesting is that they have scriptural readings that they choose, and so out of deference, right, they pick things from our kind of shared tradition. But even in the hymnal, they pick a hymn of which the musical setting is Yigdal. It even says that that's the musical setting. And another one that was Rock of Ages, which if that doesn't ring a bell, is a different time of year. But all of a sudden, so Jerry Cohn was there, and you could see immediately, he looks up and he goes, "This sounds very familiar." And he realizes that it's Mao's Tzur, right? And he's singing, but it's in the hymnal book. So but Yigdal finds its way. It finds its way into everything. So enough talking about it, we'll see. Yigdal Elohim Chai ve'yishabach Zimtzah Yehineh El Metziuto 628 Echad ben Yachid Ve'yichudo Le'lam V'gam Mitzvot Le'achduto Elo Demutadut Ve'eino Guf Lo Na'aroch Elav Kedushato Admon L'chol Davar Asher Nivra Rishon ben Reshit leReshito, Hino Adon Olam lechol notzar, Yorek Gedulato Malchuto, Shefad Uvato Netano El, Anshe Segulato Vetifarto, Lo Kam BeYisrael Kemoshe Od, David Yumavit Etunato, Torah et Natan le'amoel, al yad v'yon eman beito. Lo yachalifa el, v'lo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato. Sofem yodea setareinu, mabit l'sof davar bekadmato. Komer li'ish chesed kemifalo, noten rashara gerishato, yishlach l'ketz yamim bedut olam, kol chai v'ish yakir yeshuato. Chaye olam nata b'tocheinu, baruch adei ad shem hilato. Chaye olam nata b'tocheinu, Baruch Adonai Shem Dehilato.
We're on page 604. We'll rise for Kiddush.
Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Hashabbat, la'asot et Hashabbat le'torotam berichitam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam oti le'olam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Hashabbat, la'asot et Hashabbat le'torotam berichitam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Hashabbat, la'asot et Hashabbat le'dorotam berichitam. U'ayom hashmish Shabbat v'yinachash, Shabbat v'yinachash, Shabbat v'yinachash. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Hashabbat, la'asot et Hashabbat le'dorotam berichitam. Al ken berach Adonai et yom haShabbat v'yikadshenu savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'olam. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. I think Howard, we may have some challah still in there. If anybody wants a challah or a rebel wants to go, I think. I don't know. I think we got some. So we don't know. We'll see. Good Shabbos to our friends watching at home. To our study, 12 o'clock on Zoom.